Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you guys are all doing really well. If you're new to my channel, then welcome. I do a lot of career and personal finance related videos here on my channel. Now for today's video, as you can tell by the title, I want to go through some interview tips for any interview you have coming up. These tips are very general in nature, but I feel like they are very applicable for any interview that you go for. So I thought I'd just break it down for you guys and give you my top tips for having a successful interview. So if you are interested, then please keep watching. Now, before we begin, if you haven't already, then please do subscribe to my channel down below, and be sure to follow me over on my Instagram as well. It's just Success by Sanjana. Now, let's get started. Step 1, how to prepare for an interview. Now, I think preparing for an interview, you need to think of the interview as being a conversation between yourself and the interviewer. It should never be a one-way conversation where you are getting grilled by the interviewer. As part of step 1, I think it's also very important before you do go for an interview that you understand what it is that you want. What do you want your routine to look like? What do you want your schedule to look like? Is this something that actually fits in with your schedule as well and your personal values and interests? Are your skills and capabilities going to be challenged? And does it actually fit in with your career goals and your interests? So this is the first step, which I think is very important. Step 2 is never wing the interview. I think a lot of us think that we're good at taking interviews or we're good at being interviewed, but you should never really rely on this, because it's very important to do your research. It's very important to know about the job that you're applying for so that you have really well-rounded answers when you are giving them to the interviewer. And I think it's very important to find people on LinkedIn and speak to them prior to your interview so that you know the person that you're interviewing, what they're like, what the organization is like, and what's the actual job and what does it entail. As part of this as well, you can actually follow the company on LinkedIn, on all of their social media as well, so that you are on top of what they're doing in terms of, corporate social responsibility, what they're doing in general, and where do they see themselves in the next, short term or even long term as well. I think having that understanding about the organization that you've applied for is very important. So make sure you do your research. Number 3 is preparing your answers. Now you may ask, how am I going to be able to prepare these answers if I don't know the question? Well, let me tell you, there are 4 main types of questions that are asked at an interview. The first being the standard question, tell me a little about yourself. Now this is the part where you can actually rote learn this and recite this, and this is something you can definitely prepare for. When you get asked a question like this, it's very important to let them know what you're doing. What are you currently doing? Are you working? Are you studying? Let them know about your future goals, your hobbies, and let them know why you even applied for the job if you think it is relevant. Second type of questions that you receive are behavioral types of questions. These questions can be searched online. There's so many examples of behavioral types of questions. I'll leave some here on the screen as well, where you can actually, prepare answers for. The third types of questions that you receive are situational based questions. Again, these are very, very common, and you do see a lot of interviewers asking these types of questions just to see and pick your brain as to whether you know what you're talking about. The fourth type of question is a knowledge based sort of question. Now this is usually for jobs that are of a little bit of a higher level, but there's no reason for these not to be asked as well. So depending on the job that you've applied for, there may be some knowledge based questions around that as well. Now that we've established the types of questions that do get asked, let's break that down a little bit further. Now specifically, the types of questions that you do get asked at a standard interview include problem solving, teamwork, helping customers, driving results, and leadership. Now, the way that I would personally answer these questions is in the form of a STAR model. I think this is a very good model. It's something that I definitely use as well, and it just guides me in answering my question. There's a bit of a template that you can follow so that you're not fluffing around and that you're not just, wasting and beating around the bush. So I think following the STAR method is definitely something I recommend, and not only the STAR method, but I do like to add one more S at the end to make it stars, and that is self-reflect. So this is where you talk about obviously the star model, and once you've spoken about it, you talk about your self-reflection. What did you learn? What could you do better? I think this is a good way to show the interviewer that you've actually had some time to sit down and think about what your potential actions could have been if the situation was different, or what you could do better. This shows the interviewer that you're ready to reflect, take on feedback, and change your actions accordingly. Moving on to step 4, and that is make sure you ask questions at the end of the interview. You don't want to leave the interview without having asked a question. When you get the opportunity and the interviewer asks you, do you have any questions? This is your opportunity to take up and ask as many questions as you can. I think it's very important to at least have 2 questions up your sleeve. Of course, you would have already asked questions whilst having your conversation with the interviewer, but I think it's very important at the end as well to ask some questions which haven't been answered yet. So a few examples could be, why do you like your job? Why have you been here for 11 years? What does success look like in this role? And what are the key deliverables? Can you give me a little day in the life of an analyst and what that really looks like? Now, moving on to a few tips that I've got around interviews in general. I think it's very important to practice for interviews. One thing that I definitely recommend you do, as awkward and as silly as it does sound, I think it's very important to record yourself and watch that over, because you can tell if you're smiling, if you're using too many hand sort of gestures, what your body language is like, what your eye contact, what your confidence is like, and your tone of voice as well. So it's very important to record yourself and watch that through so you can critique yourself and perfect it for the final interview. Now, let's move on to the second part of this video, where I talk about surviving the interview when you're actually in the interview and what the basics of interview survival look like. So the first one is to be relaxed. They are also real humans as well, and they're not out there to bite you. Obviously, they are curious to find out more about them, but you are just as curious to find out about them as well. So be relaxed and stay focused. Be on time. This is very important to show your employer that you are going to be diligent and you are going to actually show up to work. Dress to impress. This is, I think, a non-negotiable. Of course, for your first interview, I think it's better to be overdressed than underdressed. Use complete sentences in your interview. Avoid using acronyms and slang and saying all the time. Don't waffle. This is something that happens when people are unprepared and they actually just waffle on. You don't want to be this person. Use silence instead of using the word Take this time to think about your responses. There's no harm in awkward silences. Body language. I think this is a very important one. Your voice, your tone, your pitch, posture, and gestures. These are all aspects which are very important for your interview, especially in a video interview. I think it's also very important to nod at appropriate times so that you can acknowledge, engage, and really show the interviewer that you are interested as well, instead of you just looking at their face blankly. Smile. This does wonders for an interviewer. I think this is very important to show that you are a warm and bubbly personality. Thank the interviewer at the end for their time and make sure you are well rested. Now, if you are scheduled in for a video interview, I've got a few tips for you as well, which I think are very important and something that you should definitely do well in advance of your video interview. So a few of those tips include: be aware of your surroundings. This is very important. I think when you are having a video interview, you need to know what is going to be in frame and what isn't, because showing things like your messy bed, showing clothes on your bed may not always be a good reflection of who you are, and it may just show the interviewer that you are not actually aware of your surroundings. Ensure you light up your setting. You can use natural sunlight. Just sit next to a window. You don't need to have, a proper setup. Make sure that you prop up your laptop, because laptops are usually lower than our eyesight. It just may not look like you are having a conversation. It may look like to the interviewer that you are looking down upon them. So just prop up your laptop and make sure it is eye level to the camera. And if there are any technical issues, make sure you ask for an alternative method of contact as well, just in case. Now, let's talk about salary expectations. This is something that I get asked here all the time on my channel. A lot of us do make the mistake of asking salary related questions at the wrong time of the application process. What I would recommend is to contact the recruiter to ask for your salary expectations. Ask around and see what is the actual market rate for your job, and the recruiter will obviously have an idea as to what this is for your job description. Market my research, just having a look on Glassdoor, Reddit forums as well, to see what the average salary actually looks like. And finally, just wait until the offer is actually provided. I think this is a good one, just so that you can avoid that awkward conversation, and once you do receive it in a contract, you can actually accept it or decline it, and you don't feel, you know, awkward about asking it at the wrong time. So those are all the tips that I wanted to mention around interviews. If you've got any question at all, then be sure to email me or book in a one-on-one call with me over on my website, and I'll be more than happy to help you out with your interview process. Now guys, that's the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in my next one. Thanks guys.